School districts, meantime, stopping teachers from disclosing students' gender transitions to their parents. Listen to this. In Montgomery County, Maryland, schools declaring that, quote, all students have a right to privacy that apparently includes the right to keep their transgender status a secret, and disclosing such information to parents may violate privacy law. Philadelphia schools also passing new gender regulations for kids K through 12 that include protecting the rights of transgender children, protecting a student's transgender status by not disclosing it to parents, and mandating staff undergo gender training. Erika Sanzi, the Director of Outreach for Parents Defending Education, joins me now. Erika, thanks for being here. When I read all that, when I listen to it, to me it just seems like the very latest in a long list of attempts to try and replace us parents with the state. You agree?
Well, there's no question that policies across the country have taken hold that are attempting to drive a wedge between parents and their children. And we need to keep in mind, right, like a school will not give our children Tylenol or Advil or even let them use sunscreen without parents signing a permission slip. And yet now we have school districts, again, across the country who are deliberately deceiving parents and also acknowledging that they are withholding information from parents.
That is such a great point. You can't look one way. You have to sign a permission slip for everything when it comes to school, and yet they're allowed to do this. Something that stands out to me, Erika, is a child cannot legally agree to anything until they're 18 years of age, with some very, very limited exceptions. Why do these districts think they can overrule centuries of law?
Well, what's happened is there's been such a hijacking of language that suddenly when we hear words like inclusion and belonging and, non-discrimination, they don't mean what they meant before. And so in this case, we have school districts who are, again, not only withholding information from parents, but they state in their policies that they're changing internal records. Electronic records are being changed to reflect the children's new chosen name and pronouns, for example, and yet the external facing records that the parents see remain in the child's legal name. So it is deliberate deception happening on the part of school districts in the name of inclusion is what they'll say. But since when do we allow children to decide whether or not their parents get to know something? That has never been the case. And even in cases, for example, where we saw, let's say, students had an eating disorder or students were cutting themselves or some form of self-harm, they always would let parents know. They would never say, oh, hold on, let me help you do this thing that's hurting you better and hide it from your parents.
We're talking about Maryland, we're talking about Pennsylvania. How widespread is this, Erika, beyond those two states?
So this is what has been staggering to me over the past 18 months as I've looked into this. And I should say I'm pretty dialed into what's going on in school districts. My own school district passed a policy that states explicitly it will hide information from parents, and that it also states that children will be able to use the locker rooms and the restrooms that align with their gender identity on that day and sleep on overnight field trips, wherever they choose to based on their gender identity. This is in red and blue states, whether it's Iowa, Wisconsin, Texas, Rhode Island, where I am, Pennsylvania, as you stated. This is ubiquitous. And the reason is that parents are just realizing it is because a lot of these policies, a lot of these guidelines were put into place either completely behind parents' backs or with very little public input and or communication with the public.
A question I keep coming back to is why? Why do they want to do this? That's a question for another day. Why does it always appear like at every turn they're trying to hypersexualize our children and not let them be kids? It makes no sense. And the fact that they're trying to keep parents from knowing is the worst aspect of all. Erika Sanzi, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your work on this as a parent. I appreciate it.